Story 1. Witch in the Village. My grandmother told me this story. It happened in the village, when my relatives had not yet moved to the city, and happened immediately after the birth of my mother. We are talking about a witch who lived nearby. The village was big then. Grandma says because people who worked on the land were valued, they paid normally on the state farm. And besides, everyone had their own farm, so no one left anywhere. By that time, my mother, the youngest daughter in the family, was born. With her birth, all this devilry began. There was only one grandmother living in their village at that time, Kazimiroshna. I don't know why they called her that. Maybe her middle name, but I'll say something else. There were rumors that she was a real witch. Her house stood apart, at the very end of the street, behind which there was already a field. She herself did not work anywhere. She maintained a small farm, a vegetable garden and chickens, led by a black rooster, that's all. She seemed like an ordinary old woman, but people really didn't like her. It was rumored that the witch was holding a Sabbath in the field, right behind the house. And this happens every year. And all the time he sacrifices a black rooster. It seems that one of the villagers personally saw her cutting off his head, and in the morning the bird was already in the yard, as if nothing had happened. It is unclear why the witch did this, but good things were not to be expected. And after the birth of my mother, the witch began to often leave her hut. She kept hovering around my grandmother, as if she wanted to help. Just understand, people are already superstitious, but there are such rumors about Kazimiroshna. Grandma always turned some of her clothes inside out and stuck pins in them to protect against damage or the evil eye. God forbid. He tells how one night he wakes up and hears quiet, careful steps. He looks and there is no one in the hut, but the floorboards are creaking, and the daughter next to me began to stir, as if something was bothering her in her sleep. The grandmother blurted out the prayer like a tongue twister. The steps died down, but the child still tossed and turned. She again and again. Once, he says, on the 6th or 7th time, there was swearing. The last words were blasphemed at her. But she recognized the voice. It was the witch. But the persecution did not stop there. For another month or a month and a half, Kazimiroshna followed her grandmother. It was as if she was waiting for the moment when she would gape and release the child. And then the tractor driver gave birth to their daughter. And then the witch suddenly fell behind our family. Everything would be fine. But soon the whole village thundered. The tractor driver's daughter had died. I stopped breathing in my sleep. As soon as the grandmother found out, she immediately understood that there was something fishy in this story. She began to walk around, console the family, and she herself found out if a witch had appeared among them. It turned out that, indeed, exactly the day before the baby's death, Kazimiroshna appeared. Well, here my grandmother no longer began to hide anything. She told it like it is. Everything that happened to her, how the witch pursued her, did not allow her to take a step. The father of the dead daughter heard everything, grabbed an axe and rushed to the house of this hag. Several more men tagged along with him. It's all in vain. When they arrived, the yard was empty, the doors were wide open, everything was in disrepair. It feels like no one has lived there for several years. The chicken coop is destroyed, the garden is overgrown with weeds, and there is dust in the house. The men, however, did not calm down. They set the hut on fire and stood there, watching it burn. It is not clear why Kazimiroshna needed the child's life, maybe for the ritual of her black one, or to extend her own life. A lot of assumptions were made, but everything was as the grandmother said, just scratch your tongue. But no one will tell you the truth. The witch was never seen again. Story 2. Resurrected. This happened a long time ago. My friend's oldest sister died a terrible death. He took it very hard, even cried at night, huddled in a corner. I felt sorry for him, so I decided to take the unfortunate woman's body with me. Let it stay with me until the funeral. I also told him that I would help with organization and everyday matters. He agreed. First day, I got up for work. I turned on the kettle, did my exercises and styled my hair. The weather was clear, sunny and beautiful. I went outside, looked around and breathed in this wonderful air. I didn't even want to go to work. I wanted to better enjoy this autumn, the golden autumn, but I still went to work. Gold and red leaves fell onto my rose-decorated hat. I finally got there, and reluctantly I entered this building, where I would sit until 6 p.m. Evening. Moonlight reflections fall onto the street. The silhouettes of the trees seem like giants. Somewhere in the grass a cricket is cutting. I walk, temptingly looking around the night street. My Khrushchev-era house is already visible. I walk to the second floor. I open the door slightly and enter the apartment. I was accompanied by the creaking of the old wooden floor. My dog threw herself on my lap in the hope that I had brought her something tasty. But I didn't live up to her hopes because I didn't go to the store. I was very tired and therefore, quickly taking off my shoes, I entered my room where the body of the unfortunate woman was located. I smelled a very unpleasant smell. Then I vomited. I couldn't believe that I would live these 2 days. Then I undressed, took a cold shower and went to bed. I heard heavy wheezing and moaning. I opened my eyes and raised my head. Then I saw that the coffin was slowly opening. Some black stuff started pouring out from there. Then the coffin lid flew off in my direction. The deceased came out of the coffin, swaying, and walked towards me. "No," I shouted, throwing my shoe at her. She wheezed, and, taking the shoe out of her eye, threw it at me. I ran away with all my might. I was sweating so much from fear that the sweat was dripping off me in streams. I ran into the toilet and locked myself. No, she's knocking down the door. The sound of breaking wood is heard. Then I kick out the old glass with my foot. The fragments fly down with a ringing sound. I sit on the windowsill and calculate where I will jump. She'd already burst in, and the door fell to the floor. I see this out of the corner of my eye. Then I jump out the window. I fell on the wet lawn. Ay, how painful, I thought to myself. Then I heard wheezing from behind. I realized that she wouldn't just leave me alone. I ran. She ran with all her might, not noticing anyone. Darkness, complete darkness, help it. I shouted desperately. The deceased did not lag behind. She laughed an ominous laugh. On the way I met a man about 25 years old. He looked at me and pointed his finger at my temple, thereby telling me that I was a fool. But then, his gaze sharply shifted to the corner of the house. He crossed himself and dived into the thickets of thorny rose hips. Bah! There was a clap on the wall. Oh no, I ended up in a dead end and hit my head really hard. She did not lag behind, and her icy palm fell on my neck. She started to choke me. Choke and laugh. I started reading a prayer. Then she let go of my neck, retreated to the briar thickets and disappeared. Then I got a sharp stabbing sensation in my right side, and I lost consciousness. In the morning I woke up and reluctantly went home. When I walked in, the floor creaked, and I was shocked. The stools were overturned, the dishes were broken, the coffin lid was lying on my bed, and the deceased was lying in the coffin. My dog hid under the bathtub and whined pitifully. Then I tied the hands and feet of the deceased, closed the coffin, and moved to the dacha with the dog. The funeral went well, but I noticed that when they carried the deceased, she stuck her hand out of the coffin and showed me her fig. I also noticed white spots in the photo. A year later, an unpleasant incident occurred at the cemetery. The deceased's grave was half dug up, and my friend was found dead in his apartment. There was animal horror on his face. I believed in mysticism, and I'm afraid that my turn will soon come.